Welcome to the show. I'm so happy about this. Freedom Watch stands at the start of a bold new era. Starting this Monday, we'll be here every night at 8 p.m. Eastern, acting as your night watchman for the overreaching of big government. We go prime time every single night. And if you don't think there will be plenty of wrongdoing for us to keep an eye on, consider these items from our Freedom File, all of them reminders that government is force, not the source of our freedom. Think of the couple whose beloved dog, Bear, was roughhousing with another dog in a Maryland dog park earlier this year, until the owner of the other dog, an armed off-duty cop, decided he didn't care for the roughhousing and shot and killed Bear. Aside from the gunshot, neither dog showed any sign of injuries and no one was prosecuted. Think of Yasser Afifi, a college student in California, who discovered a tracking device attached to his car. And when this was reported online, he suddenly got a visit from the FBI asking for their tracking device back. Though the FBI did not charge Mr. Afifi with a crime, or explain why he was under investigation, or show him the required search warrant authorizing them to put the device in his car. Think of Mark Ashford, who was beaten by two Denver cops when they overheard him offer to act as a witness to the cops incorrectly charging someone with a traffic violation, after which Mr. Ashford made the terrible mistake of trying to photograph the cops for later reference. Oh, the government likes to watch us, but it doesn't like when we watch it. But we shall. 5 nights a week, your night watchman, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern on Monday.
Do we believe in the individual, or do we believe in the state? Thomas Jefferson wrote that government is best that governs least. Likewise, freedom is best when enjoyed by the most.
He was the Tea Party candidate that the Republican establishment said could not win. But Rand Paul bucked his own party, defied the odds, and now the libertarian eye doctor is a senator-elect. His father, Dr. Ron Paul, has been reelected to the House from Texas, and both of these defenders of limited government and constitutional freedom join us now. Gentlemen, first, welcome to Freedom Watch together. Congratulations on both of your election victories. Congressman Paul, to you first. The Republicans will have the majority in the House of Representatives come January. You may very well be the chair of the Monetary Subcommittee of the House Financial Services Committee. The Republicans will have the subpoena power. Will you, or will the Republicans, use the subpoena power to make Ben Bernanke show up and bring his ledger sheets with him? Will we ever find out through the subpoena power what the Federal Reserve has been up to?
If it's necessary, we have it, and we should use it. And I think that is one way of circumventing their stonewalling us. They've stonewalled all the entities that have tried to sue them under the Freedom of Information Act. And, of course, they had a lot of influence last year when we had the bill passed to audit the Fed to get that taken out in committee. So I think if they don't come clean, the subpoena power should be used.
Over in the Senate, Senator-elect Paul, the bill to audit the Fed will no likely make its way to you. It will pass in the House as it did last time, even with the Democrats controlling the House. It will pass in the Senate, and then they'll try and kill it in committee. Can it survive the Byzantine ways of Senate politics?
Well, I think, we had 37 votes for it when it went through last time. The Vitter Amendment had 37 people in favor of my father's audit the Fed. So I think we try again, and we try to convince a few more people to do it, and also convince them that the watered-down audit the Fed wasn't enough.
Congressman Paul, a lot of new members will join the House in January who are strong constitutionalists, open libertarians, people embracing the Tea Party. Will they bring the Republican Party to its Ron Paul roots, or will the good old boys club co-opt them?
Well, if you go by history, the old club will co-opt it and have control, but I think conditions are different. The Tea Party movement is very strong. Grassroots America have awakened. So I'm hopeful that they will stick to their guns, and I think the Republicans in the House will do much better because they don't have a Republican president sending down the directions. That's why we were so weak last time. This time they will be standing up to Obama, and they'll be sending him some bills, and if we do get it past the Senate, he'll have to veto them. So I think the House is going to do much better, but to have a true revolution, we have a lot more work to do, because they may call themselves constitutionalists. As you well know, Judge, a lot of people, they don't lose sleep over how they vote, and they have a different interpretation. They don't think they disobey the Constitution. It's just that they get their authority from the General Welfare Clause and the Interstate Commerce Clause. So that's our problem. It's an educational problem that we have to overcome, along with determination to stick to principle.
Senator Paul, I don't think anybody argued the Constitution better and more effectively than you did this past November, and it obviously resonated well with the voters in Kentucky. Where do you stand on this divide amongst Republicans in the Senate already over earmarks? Mitch McConnell, your soon-to-be fellow senator from Kentucky, wants them. Jim Inhofe, the conservative Republican from Oklahoma, wants them. Jim DeMint, who went out of his way to support you in the primary against establishment Republicans, soon to be your colleague from South Carolina, does not want them. Where do you stand?
Well, you know, I have to be careful because I still want to eat at the adults' table at Thanksgiving, and my dad and I have a disagreement on this. But I've come down with a position that I think, even though it's not an enormous amount of dollars that go into earmarks, that the symbolism of putting unrelated spending amendments on bills that really don't go through the committee process is what a lot of people perceive earmarks to be. I think it's not a good thing. And I think the whole idea that Mrs. Smith gives money to my campaign, and Mrs. Smith's grandmother was prominent in my community, so I name a museum after her, and it gets stuck on unrelated bills, I think that's what's galling to people. Now, there is a constitutional question on whether Congress can direct where money is spent and whether the president should, and I understand my dad's position on that, but I think the symbolism of how earmarks have been used in the past, I mean, there were 6,000 earmarks on a transportation bill a few years ago, whereas when Ronald Reagan was around, he vetoed one that had 192 earmarks. So the earmarking process has gotten out of control.
Okay, switching from earmarks, here's Jim DeMint just the other day. I want the two of you to listen to this. He's basically saying you can't be a fiscal conservative without also being a social conservative. We have to tell people how to live. Take a listen.
You can't be a fiscal conservative and not be a social conservative. A large part of the expansive government is to make up for a dysfunctional society because our culture's falling apart, the family's falling apart.
Is this going to divide, Congressman Paul, the libertarians in the Congress from those who want to be faithful to the Constitution only on fiscal matters, but still want the government to tell people how to live their lives?
Well, I see his statement as incomplete. I think he infers, that the government would be involved in social conservatism. But I'm a social conservative. I just don't want to use force to improve, social conditions. So that's the big difference. If you want to impose social values by law, that's a different story than arguing the case that, social conservatism and family life and religious values, these are all beneficial, but we just don't want the government to be doing this. So, I like to look at the First Amendment. The First Amendment is toleration. You tolerate people in freedom of speech, even when they say bad and dumb things. And that's the way it should be in social things. We tolerate people making mistakes with their lives, but that doesn't diminish our desire and requirement to improve social mores. And that is, where's the responsibility? I say, on the individual and on the family and our churches and our community, certainly not in the government.
Senator-elect Paul, we only have about 30 seconds. Where are you on this? Should we shrink the government, or should we enact more laws and tell people how to live because it's the way we think people should live, like Senator DeMint has suggested?
Well, I think we need to shrink government, and I'm not sure that's exactly what he was saying, but I think we do need to shrink government. The primary problems that face our nation are economic. The Tea Party really is bringing people together on economic issues and isn't so much about social issues. I am socially conservative, but I see that the Tea Party can bring people together of all walks of life who say, you know what, we can't continue to run these massive deficits, and it's primarily economic issues that are driving the Tea Party, I think.
Congressman Paul, Senator Paul, thanks very much for joining us on Freedom Watch.
Thank you.
Next, a very unusual Republican turned into a very unusual leftist. Arianna Huffington is here to tell us why the American middle class is doomed. And where do you hear who she's blaming?